Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will present about approach, methods, and techniques or popular teaching methods. We are from 9 group. The member of group, my name is Dwina Rahmakisti and my friends Novia Ayuni Diana, Dewi Safitri, and Muhammad Dafa Altof Febrian. First, I will explain about approach, methods, and technique. What is approach? Approach describes how people acquire their knowledge of the language and make statements about their conditions which will promote successful language learning. How about method? Method is the practical realization of an approach. The originators of a method have arrived at decisions about types of activities, roles of teachers and learners, the kinds of material which will be helpful, and some model of syllabus organization. Then procedure. Procedure, an ordered sequence of techniques. Then a procedure is a sequence which can be described in terms such as first you do this, then you do that. It's actually smaller than a method, it is bigger than a technique. Then how about technique? It will be such as silent viewing, Finger's technique, and another technique, such as silent viewing. Exactly by using video or film material where the teacher plays the video with no sound. Finger technique is used by some teachers. They hold up their hands and allocate a word to each of their 5 fingers. And another technique is to tell all the students in a group to murmur a new word or phrase to themselves for a few seconds just to get their tongues around it. Then I will explain about grammar, translation, direct method, and audio linguism. First one is grammar translation. That's students were given explanation of individual points of grammar, and then they were given sentences which exemplified these points. The sentences had to be translated from the target language or L2 back to the student's first language or L1 and vice versa. The second one is direct method. The direct methods which arrived at the end of the 19th century was the product of a reform movement which was reacting to the restrictions of grammar translation. And the last one, audiolingualism. Audiolingualism relied heavily on drills to form these habits. Substitution was built into these drills so that in small steps the student was constantly learned and moreover was shielded from the possibility of making mistakes by design of the drill. Then I will explain about presentation, practice, and production or PPP. First one is presentation. The teacher introduces a situation which contextualizes the language to be taught. The language too is then presented, such as the teacher saw the picture that people are doing something like activities such as reading a book, listening to music, and watching the movie. Then teacher asks everybody that such as what you are doing, what he is doing, and then the teacher gives model of sentence such as she is reading a book. Then practice. Exactly, the student practice the language using accurate reproduction techniques such as choral repetition, individual repetition, and cue response drill, such as that I talked before. The teacher gave the model of sentence such as she is reading a book. Then the Student repeat the sentence like she is reading a book. And the last one is production. The students using the new language make sentences of their own, and this is referred to as production. Such as the teacher may get the must now come up with sentences such as my mother is working at the hospital exactly. They use own language, or the teacher give a clue activity or another activity, then the student can give their own sentence.
Hello everyone, my name is Wauda of Febrian. I will continue the presentation about PPP and alternatives to PPP. Michael Lewis suggests that PPP was inadequate because it reflected neither the nature of language nor the nature of learning. Kate Johnson suggests the deep end strategy as an alternative, whereby encouraging the students into immediate production. You turn the procedure on its head. The teacher can now see if where students are having problems during these productions, pass and return to either presentation or practice as and when necessary after the production phase is over. Any meaning-focused activity where the language is not restricted provokes students into language activation. ESA allows for 3 basic lesson procedures. The teacher engages students by presenting a picture or a situation, or by drawing them in by some other means. At the study stage of the procedure, the meaning and form of the language are explained. The teacher then models the language and the students repeat and practice it. A boomerang procedure, on the other hand, follows a more task-based or deep-end approach. Based on what happens there, the student will then, after the activity has finished, study some aspect of language which they lacked. The next is for method. For methods developed in the 1970s and 1980s, one of the most notable features of the silent way is the behavior of the teacher, who rather than entering into conversation with the student says a little as possible. The students' utterance may then be recorded so that they can be analyzed a later date. Students, with the teacher's help, reflect on how they felt about the activities. Students need to be comfortable and relaxed so that their affective filter is lowered. Students take on different names and exist in child-parent relationship with the teachers. During this phase, there are also several minutes of solemn silence, and the students leave the room silently. A typical total physical response lesson might involve the teacher telling students to pick up the triangle from the table and give it to me, or walk quickly to the door and hit it. When the student call and respond to commands correctly, one of them can then start giving instruction to other classmates. Crucially, in TPR, students don't have to give instructions themselves until they are ready. And then the next, communicative teaching language. A real problem when attempting to define CLT is that it means different things to different people. One of the things that CLT embraces within its family is the concept of how language is used. 1970s look at what notion language express and what communicative function people perform with language that should be focused on the content of what they are saying or writing rather than a particular language form. They should use a variety of language rather than just one language structure. The teacher will not intervene to stop the activity, and the material he or she relies on will not dictate what specific language forms the student use either. In other words, such activities should tend to reflect real communication. Some may be further towards the communicative end, whereas some may be more non-communicative. Activity in which students have to go around the class asking questions with a communicative purpose, but using certain prexhibits.
My name is Dewi Safitri. I will explain about task-based learning, the lexical approach, teacher and student dialogue together. First, task-based learning. The task-based learning makes the performance of meaningful tasks central to the learning process is informed by belief that if students are focused on the competition of tasks, they are just as likely to learn language as they are if they are focused on language form. 3 basic stage. 1. Pre-task, introduction to topic and task. In the pre-task stage, the teacher explores the topic with the class may highlight useful words and phrase, helping students to understand the task instruction. The student might hear recording of other people doing the same task. 2. Task cycle, task planning report. During the task cycle stage, the student perform the task in pairs of small group while the teacher monitor from the distance. The student display how they will tell the rest of the class what they did and how it went. And they then report on the task either orally or in writing and compare notes on what has happened. The last stage, language focus analysis practice. In language focus stage, the student examine and discuss specific feature of any listening or reading text. Next, the lexical approach. The lexical approach discussed by Dave Wills in 1990s and popular by Michael Lewis in 1993 and 1997 is based on the assertion that language consists not of traditional grammar and vocabulary but often of multi-word perfected chunk. Lewis 1997. This highlight of an area language that was perhaps previously undervalued has played a valuable role provoking debate about what students should study. A lexical approach would steer us away from an over concentration on syntax and tense usage, with vocabulary slotted into this grammar pattern, toward the teaching of phrases which show words in combination and which are generative in different ways from traditional grammar substitution table. Teacher and student dialogue together. Thornbury 2005 described the original article published in 2000's suggestion that ELT need similarities actionably a return to material and technology-free classroom in which language emerges in a teacher and student engage in dialogue relationship. This original article provoked considerable interest and group of teachers emerged who want to apply certain principles of language learning. They reasoned that language is construct between teacher and student where it emerges as it's scaffolded by teacher rather than being acquired. They were hostile to material being brought into the classroom since this interfered with the dialogic relationship between teacher and student.
Hello, my name is Novia Ayudiana. I will continue the presentation and now I'm going to tell you about methods and culture in language learning. Adrian Holiday is a writer from England who comes up with the term native speakerism. This term describes British and American teaching methodology and practices that have been exported around the world. But with this term, there is also worry about differences between native English speakers and non-native English speakers, and it's also influenced by different cultures. When the language teaching method is adjusting in learning process, the obstacle exists from the students who are not native English speakers. Because they are not accustomed with the English learning method, maybe they shy or they afraid of making mistake as they learn English, whereas the teachers is willing to guide them if students have difficulties in learning language, and thus causing teachers, especially teachers who already native English speakers, need to adjust the learning methods and adapt to student culture in which place the teacher are teaching. And next is about bargains, post method, and context sensitivity. Bargain is where the teachers and students make a deal, decided what methods they are going to use in language learning. Next is post method. It means the teachers as center of language learning. In this position, students need to appreciate to the teachers, and students need to believe if teachers are capable to teach language and respect to their feedback if the students need improvement in language learning. And for the last is context sensitivity. It means where meaning depends on context. Next is making choices. Kumara Vadivelu stated that teachers have to be able to summarize the key components of various described methods according to what the students need and what should the teachers offer them. And here we have 6 trends. The first is affect. Affect is the students will be easier to understand learning language once they are engaged with action or learning by experience. The second is input. Input is how teachers taught the students as learning language, not only make students understand to what they learn, but also focus that students know how to use language properly. And next is output. Students need to develop their language skill and knowledge through assignments. This output is aimed to knowing how far students are able to using language. They know the meaning and they know how to use it in right form. Next is cognitive effort. The students need support to ease and developing them in learning language. Students actually can practice the language in their daily activities rather than being given about language theory. For instance, students try to speak English with their pet at home even though their English was not perfect yet. Next is grammar and lexis. Of course, they are most important things when we learn language, any language, and they are really need to be taught and understand properly. For the last is how, why, and where. Why? It means we have reasons why are we teaching language. We know the aims we teaching language and what do we want to achieve by teaching language. Next is where. With whom and what context we teaching language. And last is how. It means we need to adjust the feature and techniques as we teaching based on the situation we are in. So that's all about our presentation. We apologize if we made mistakes in advance. If you guys have any question, you can text the question to my class. Thank you for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.